Hey there, all you fantastic people. I hope your day has been absolutely wonderful. We're back with another thrilling episode of What If Naruto Was the Rogue Shinigami. Make sure to show some appreciation to the talented author behind this fanfiction. You'll find the link waiting for you down in the description. If you're loving this mind-bending what if, don't hold back, drop a comment and share your thoughts. And while you're at it, don't miss out on exploring the other captivating what ifs available on this channel. Alright, without further ado, let's kick off this video and dive into this exciting journey. But what about her? Asked Naruto as he turned to Kushina, where for a moment he thought about bringing her with them, so that he could answer some of his questions. We'll leave her here, she'll be alright, the Amitsukido or the other Shinigami that are heading this way will take care of her. Reluctantly Naruto agreed, knowing that if they took her with them, she would only slow them down. He then turned to Kushina one last time and said, "See you, Red. Nice meeting you." Hearing this, Kushina tried to stop them, but all she could do was say, "Wait. Don't. Go. Naruto." But by then the two had shunpo away and Kushina was left alone, and soon lost consciousness. When the Amitsukido arrived moments later, they found Kushina lying on the ground unconscious, her face covered in tears and mumbling the same word again and again. Naruto. With Naruto and Urachi. Leaving Kushina behind, Naruto and his adopted mother wasted no time in putting in as much distance between them and the pursuing Amitsukido as they could. After travel through the Serite, Court of Pure Souls, for about an hour, the two of them found a safe place to hide and rest. "Phew, I beat," said Naruto as he fell to the floor and leaned against the wall behind him. "I'm not surprised," said Urachi, who was still in her cat form, and walked over to her adopted son. "You use up a lot of your Ryukyu, spiritual energy, when you release two of your Shikai, initial release, forms in such a short period of time." "Yay, I guess I might have overdone it a bit," grinned Naruto, as he scratched the back of his head. "Who were you up against?" Urachi asked, since for Naruto to release two of his Shikai forms, they would have to be pretty strong. "The first ones I met were Mamachi Zabuza, 4th seed of Squad 11, and Yuki Haku, 5th seed of Squad 4. They were pretty strong and had really good teamwork skills." "Really?" said Urachi with surprise in her voice. "They must be new additions that came up after I left the Serite. But what surprises me is that a member of the 11th Division and a member of the 4th Division would work together, since members of the 11th Division hate the 4th Division. It might have something to do with the fact that they are both from the shinobi world like me." "The shinobi world?" repeated Urachi. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, they said as much when I fought them, also that Redeed who I defeated was from shinobi world as well." That is interesting, since not many shinobi actually become Shinigami. But that isn't best part, that Redeed was also an Uzumaki, in fact she was a lieutenant for Squad 13. "You actually defeated a lieutenant?" Urachi asked with some surprise, ignoring the fact that the woman Naruto fought was from his clan. She hadn't honestly expected Naruto to have improved so much after she left him to see Kisuke. "Yay, she was pretty tough, but I had an advantage over her, since hers Antakudo was a fire type, while I use Watasumi, sea god." "I see," said Urachi, who closed her eyes and thought everything over. She must have been recently made lieutenant, since if Naruto had fought one of the more senior lieutenants, odds are he might have lost, even with the elemental advantage. But then again Naruto is unusually strong for his age. "Do you think that she would know something about my birth parents or at least my birth mother?" Naruto asked hopefully. Although he loved his adopted mother without question and would do anything for her, he was still curious about his origins. Urachi had been able to tell him bits about his father, from the few times their paths crossed, along with some things about the Uzumaki clan. But there were still a lot of holes in Naruto's origins, holes he was eager to fill. "Perhaps, but we don't know how long she has had been here, for all we know she has been here before you were even born." "I guess," replied Naruto, but remained hopeful. "So has there been any sign of Strawberry and the others?" "No," answered Urachi as she shook her head, "but from what I have heard from the other Shinigami running around, it seems like they are causing just as much trouble as you are." "Hey, it's not my fault that I keep running into strong people," Naruto defended. "Yes, I suppose so. You've always had a knack for getting yourself into trouble," replied a smirking Urachi, after seeing her son shrug in indifference. Before long through, Naruto soon fell asleep from exhaustion. The battles had been tough, and releasing two of his Shikai had taken its toll on him. Seeing that Naruto was asleep, Urachi took out a blanket she had found in the abandoned building, and placed it on him before placing a powerful barrier around the building, which would hide Naruto's energy, and be undetectable at the same time. Once the barrier was up, the former captain of the 2nd Division took off to search for the other members of their team. She had of course wanted to stay with Naruto until he had fully recovered. But she feared that something might happen to the others if she didn't find them in time and decide to leave. Before leaving though, Yuruchi left a note for Naruto, telling him where she was gone, and that she would be back for him as soon as she could, and not to leave. A few hours after Yuruchi left, Naruto woke up and soon found the note his adopted mother left him when he realized that she was gone. Heeding Yuruchi's advice, Naruto made himself comfortable, and took out some food that he brought and ate it. After a while though, Naruto started to get impatient. Waiting had never been one of his strong suits, and he was eager to get back into the action, since he had almost fully recovered. This was of course nothing strange for Naruto, since he often recovered quickly from exhaustion, after only a few hours rest. Kisuke had often theorized that this was the result of the experiments that were performed on his ancestors. Eventually though, Naruto's attention was soon drawn to the voices of two Shinigami, who were busy talking to one another just outside the building. "I still can't believe that Captain Aizen is dead," spoke one Shinigami. "Aizen's dead?" A shocked Naruto thought, impossible. Before leaning next to the door to hear more. "I know, this is a disaster. Who could possibly be strong enough to actually kill Captain Aizen?" asked the other Shinigami. "It has to be one of those damn Ryoka," said the first Shinigami angrily. "Are you sure?" asked the second. "Who else could it be? Besides, from what I have heard, they've annihilated most of the members from the 11th division, and have taken out large numbers from the other divisions," answered the first Shinigami. "I've also heard that the 5th, 4th and 3rd seated officers from the 11th division are out of action, along with the 4th seed officers from the 4th and 7th divisions. Only crap, how the hell did a small group of Ryoka do all that? I don't know, but if they can do all that, it's not impossible to think that they can take on and kill a captain. I just hope that we don't run into any of those damn monsters, otherwise we would be finished." "No kidding," acknowledged the first Shinigami, before the two of them walked off. "Aizen is dead," Naruto repeated inside his head, "but how? Could Ka-chan have done it?" "No, not even she could have done that by herself," she said, as much Naruto thought, as he remembered his mother telling him about the man who framed Kisuke and Tessai for his crimes and forced his adopted family to flee the Sirte. When his mother told him this story involving Aizen and them, she made Naruto swear never to go near him, and run as fast as he could if he ever saw him. Something doesn't feel right, Naruto thought. Who could have taken out Aizen? There has to be some sort of explanation for it. Not willing to wait for his mother to return, and knowing that he wouldn't get any answers by staying here, Naruto slowly opened the door, and after checking the coast was clear, exited the building and the barrier, and jumped onto a nearby rooftop, before taking off to find some answers. Entering the building and the room had been surprisingly easily, as there had been few guards. Naruto had chalked it all up to the Shinigami's arrogance, believing that no one would dare try to infiltrate the Captain Commander's office. Once he had infiltrated the office, Naruto began to search the head captain's desk for any information on the Aizen's death. Fortunately, he didn't have to search for very long, and soon found Aizen's autopsy report in one of the desk drawers. According to the report, Aizen died from being impaled in the chest with his own sword, where he bled out as he hung from a building wall. At first Naruto thought that the body was a Gigai, faux body, disguised to look like Aizen. But according to the report, the autopsy had been performed by Captain Anohana herself, the head of the 4th division, meaning that body was real. Captain Anohana was not someone who made mistakes or could be fooled easily, especially if what Naruto had heard about her was true. But still, the blonde teen was skeptical, and would not believe it until he saw the body himself. Just as the young blonde had put away the report, he sensed a powerful presence outside the door. With only seconds to act, Naruto quickly jumped up to the high ceiling rafters, and suppressed his spiritual energy as much as he could, so to avoid detection. No sooner had he hid himself in the rafters, the large double doors to the office opened, where the head captain for the 13 divisions entered. The captain commander was an old man with red eyes, a very long white beard, and long eyebrows and 2 perpendicular scars above his right eye. He carried a large wooden staff in his right hand, and wore the standard Shinigami uniform, which was larger in size than normal, along with the standard Captain Haori, although instead of wearing it, he wore it over his back. Once the head captain had entered his office, Naruto could feel the old Shinigami immense spiritual pressure pouring out from his body, which would have crushed most low-level Shinigami. Yet Naruto knew that this was just the tip of the iceberg, and what he was feeling now was just residual pressure. After entering his office, the elder Shinigami stopped for a moment and looked around his office. Fearing that he had been discovered, Naruto prepared to make a break for it, but before he could make any sort of movement, the head captain turned and continued to his desk, and took his seat at his desk. Letting out a small sigh of relief, Naruto prepared to make himself comfortable and wait for an opening to escape. But before he could begin to wonder how long that might take, the captain commander suddenly spoke. "I must admit, I am impressed. Never in long history of the Sirte has an intruder, let alone a human, ever made it this far." Realizing he had been found out, and that there was no point in hiding, Naruto jumped down from the rafters and landed in the middle of the room, directly in front of the head captain, who calmly stared at the hooded boy. "I must compliment you on your stealth skills. You were able to infiltrate my office without alerting anyone, and you mask both your presence and spiritual energy well." Hearing the old man praise, Naruto just snorted, "PFFF, I wouldn't go that far, old fart," causing the head captain to narrow his eyes slightly at Naruto's blatant disrespect of him. "To put it simply, your security sucks. There were hardly any guards around, and the few that were around might as well have been statues for all the good they did. I could have infiltrated this place without anyone even knowing I was here, back when I first started my training." Ignoring Naruto's insulting remarks regarding his security, the old captain commander continued to stare at the young-headed teen. "Judging by your appearance, you are one of the Ryoka who has invaded the Sirte." "I am," replied Naruto. "What is your name and why have you invaded the Sirte?" "I'm afraid I don't feel like giving out my name just yet, but if you want to call me something you can call me Rogue," answered Naruto while performing a rather dramatic bow. "As to why I am invading your home? Well, to put it simply, I was bored and had nothing better to do." "Rogue? A rogue Shinigami? What an impudent name," Yamamoto thought, finding Naruto's moniker insulting, since it went against everything the Shinigami stood for. He was also further irritated by Naruto's answer in regards to why he had joined the invading group. "Have you come to kill me then? Because if so, you have made a grave error in judgment," the head captain said as he stared coldly at Naruto, but to his surprise Naruto just snorted again. "Heh, you don't have worry, old man. I'm not here to kill you. I don't kill old fossils like you. Besides, judging by the look of you, you already have one foot in the grave, so there's no real point in killing you." "Then why have you come here?" Yamamoto asked, once again ignoring Naruto's insults. "I just came here to get some info, and now that I've got it, I think I'll be going now," at which point Naruto made a move to go out the nearby balcony. But before he could make any more, he was stopped by a sudden massive burst of spiritual pressure, which made it seem as if gravity had just gotten heavier, causing Naruto to stumble and struggle slightly under the pressure. An NGH. Shit, Ka-chan wasn't kidding when she said the old fart was powerful. "I can barely breathe under the pressure he's giving off, let alone move," Naruto thought as he looked back at the old man. "He's a monster." At the same time, the elder Shinigami studied the hooded boy carefully. He had been both surprised and impressed by how well Naruto was handling himself under his spiritual pressure. Although he hadn't released all his spiritual pressure, he had unleashed enough where only Captain-class Shinigami would be able to withstand it. "It's remarkable that he is able to withstand so much of my spiritual pressure at so young an age. Most lieutenants would have collapsed under it," Yamamoto remarked silently and with some regret, since talented younglings like him were rare to come by. If he had been born and brought up in the Soul Society, he would have become a valuable asset to the Sirte. "I have not finished talking to you yet, and I still have some questions for you," said Yamamoto as he stood up from his seat. "Like what?" Naruto asked as he straightened himself up, and did his best to ignore the spiritual pressure that the captain commander was still releasing. "Were you the one who killed Captain Aizen?" "No," replied Naruto, "and before you ask, I don't know who did, because if I did I would want to shake their hand." "And why should I believe you?" "Believe me, if I did kill that bastard I would admit it. Openly." After hearing Naruto's response, the captain commander frowned, and began to wonder why the headed teen held so much hostility towards Aizen, who had been one of the most popular and well-liked captains in the Sirte. "Then tell me, who is the one who trained you? You clearly have received advanced training from someone." "Sorry, but I don't feel like telling," Naruto replied with a cheeking smirk, which annoyed the head captain. But before Captain Yamamoto could ask any more questions of Naruto, the headed teen cut him off. "Now I think I've answered enough of your questions and will be leaving," said Naruto, before throwing a kunai, which had suddenly appeared in his right hand, at the head captain's forehead. At the same time, he then made a break for the balcony using Shunpo, hoping that the kunai would distract the head captain just long enough for him make a break for it. But just as he jumped off the railing of the balcony, he suddenly felt a hand grabbing his right arm. Turning, Naruto was surprised to see that the hand belonged to head captain, who then pulled Naruto back before he could try anything, and then flung him back into the office and into the wall at the other end of the room, causing a large dent in it. Damn, that old man sure can move fast, muttered Naruto while picking himself up off the ground. But just as he got back onto his feet, he found a large yellow barrier forming around him. Seeing that he was now trapped, Naruto looked up and saw Captain Yamamoto slowly walking towards him. Heh, I've got to admit you're pretty spry for an old fart. What, you're 1,000 years too earlier to even think that you can outrun me, using simple shunpo, Yamamoto remarked with a disapproving stare. Really? So would that mean that you were around back when the dinosaurs were still around in the living world, or is it not long enough? In response to this comment, Naruto was pleased to see a large tick mark form on the elderly man's forehead. You're impudent little one, I will give you that, but I've dealt with arrogant little brats like you before, and they all soon learned their place, as will you, said Yamamoto, as he looked down at the now trapped hooded teen, and was surprised to see him smirking. PFFF, if anyone is arrogant here, it's you Shinigami. You lot may think you're hot shit, but you're not, and trust me, you've never met anyone like me before. Annoyed by what Naruto had said, Yamamoto was about to respond, but before the elder head captain could say anything, Naruto gave him a one-fingered salute, and then disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving a thoroughly confused and irritated head captain. In a different part of the Sirte, not far from the headquarters of the 8th Division, the real Naruto stood still, while he received the memories of Shadow Clone. After reviewing the Shadow Clone's memories, Naruto silently thanked his mother again for helping him to learn the Kage Bunshin, Shadow Clone, technique, as it had proven to be an extremely useful technique, time and again. On his way to the head captain's office, Naruto had sensed several powerful spiritual signatures coming from different parts of the Sirte. 2 of them belonged to Ichigo and Chad, while the other 2 were unfamiliar to him, but were easily at the level of a captain, which made Naruto worry. Fearing that his comrades were in danger, Naruto created 2 clones of himself, and sent the first one to the head captain's office, and the second one to where Ichigo was fighting, while he went to Chad. Shit, now I'm glad I sent a clone instead of going there myself. If I had, I would have been caught for sure. But Naruto's relief soon turned to concern when he neared 8th Division headquarters, and sensed Chad's spiritual energy drop to almost nothing, confirming Naruto's worst fears. Fuck, of all the guys the big guy had to go up against, it had to be the captain of Squad 8. If I don't do this right, I could still end up caught. After reporting the news of Captain Aizen's death to her captain, the lieutenant of the 8th Division Ice Nanao turned to the Ryoka who her captain had just defeated. Sensing that he was alive, if not just barely, Nanao walked over to him and prepared to finish him off with a Kido spell. Shall I administer the killing blow? Nanao asked, although her face seemed determined. One could hear a hint of nervousness in her voice, since she had never really killed a human before. Before her captain could respond, Nanao suddenly found herself in a standard shoulder lock, with her arm behind her back, pressing upward, and a blade to her neck. Now, I don't think that will be necessary, said Naruto in a playful tone as he stood behind the young lieutenant. Besides, lovely young maiden such as you shouldn't have to do such things. It's simply unrefined. Confused and angered by what had happened, Nanao could only glare at the hooded teen behind her, who smirked back. My, aren't we the quick one, remarked Shunsui, who seemed rather amused despite the fact that his lieutenant was being held as a hostage. In reality though, he was carefully analyzing the situation and planning what was the best situation to save his lieutenant without any harm coming to her. The hooded teen was of average height. He wore a long black hooded trench coat that covered his head, and only showed the lower part of his face. He wore standard Shinigami sandals and baggy pants and top not unlike the members of the Onmitsukido, and had a small sheath for his Tanto sword strapped to his right leg. Judging by what he had seen so far, Shunsui could tell that the hooded teen was quite skilled in terms of speed, stealth and hand-to-hand. Given how he had snuck up on them without them noticing him and how he disabled Nanao so quickly. Even though Shunsui had caught a glimpse of Naruto out of the corner of his eye, he had been so distracted with his thoughts on Aizen's death that he had been unable to act in time. I must admit it's rather rare to find someone, let alone a human, to be so skilled and at the same time be so young. Your speed is remarkable to say the least, and is easily at the level of expert, and your stealth skill is just as impressive, as I barely sensed your approach. Pleased by Shunsui praise, Naruto smirked, but kept his guard up and his blade close to Nanao's neck, in the event that Shunsui was just distracting him. He had heard from his mother that despite his aloof-like persona, Shunsui was an extremely crafty individual, and was easily one of the strongest and most dangerous captains in the Soul Society. Shunsui was exactly how Naruto pictured him after hearing about him from his mother. He was a tall, light-skinned man with high cheekbones, gray eyes and long wavy brown hair. His hair was tied in a long ponytail and had long bangs that framed the left side of his face. He also had a noticeable amount of body hair on his chest, feet and arms, and wore a straw hat, along with a pink flowered lady's kimono, which he draped across his shoulders and over his captain's uniform, and carried a pair of daisho swords on his left hip. Thanks, it means a lot coming from the famed captain of the 8th Division. But please do not come any closer, old man. I do not wish to hurt your lovely lieutenant here, but I will if I have to, said Naruto as he kept his blade close to Nanao's neck. Oh, so you've heard of me? Shunsui asked, raising his right eyebrow in interest, ignoring Naruto's threat and the fact that he called him old man. Of course, you could say I have my own little book on all the high-ranking members of the 13 Court Guard. Yukairaku no Jiro Suzosa Shunsui, or Kairaku Shunsui for short, captain of 8th Division, former student of the current captain commander of 13 Court Guard Yamamoto Genryusai Shijikuni. You are easily one of the oldest and one of the most powerful captains alive today. In terms of threat level and power, I would rank you as number 4. Well now, this is embarrassing, a smiling Shunsui said, while scratching the back of his head. You seem to know quite a bit about me, and yet I know very little about you. In fact, I don't even know your name. Call me Rogue. Rogue, ha, rather an audacious name, don't you think? Heh, that's funny coming from a guy wearing a lady's pink kimono. I suppose you have a point there, remarked Shunsui with a goofy-looking smile as he looked at his outfit. Now that we have gotten to know each other a little better, would you be so kind as to answer some questions I have? It would depend on the question. Would I be correct in assuming that you are with the same group as this person, and that you've come to recuse him? Shunsei asked as he pointed at the unconscious Chad, where he received a nod from Naruto. I see, said Shunsei, before a serious look appeared in his eyes. Then tell me what is to stop me from holding your comrade here hostage. In fact, it wouldn't be that difficult to kill him from where I am standing. In response, Naruto just smirked, as he knew the type of game Shunsei was playing. If you were to do that, I'm afraid we would then both lose. For I would then be forced to kill your lovely Nanao-chan here, and that would indeed be a shame. But I don't believe that you will harm him or hold him hostage. Oh, and why is that? Simple, you need us. Obviously you and the other captains want to know who exactly killed Aizen and how. But to do that you need to interrogate us, not to mention we hold valuable information on the rest of comrades, like how many of us there are, what they look like and what their abilities are, and you can't get that out of us if we're dead. That of course also defeats the purpose of holding Chad hostage, since I know you won't harm him, therefore you cannot threaten me with him. Shunsui sighed in defeat. Well, I guess it was worth a shot, after which he then smiled in appreciation, as Naruto had proven quite astute for his age. Now that I've answered your question, perhaps you could answer one of mine? Naruto asked, gaining the captain's attention. I suppose that's only fair, replied Shunsui with a thoughtful look. By all means ask away. Okay, can you tell me how old the old fart really is? Huh? Said Nanao, who despite having a blade held to her throat by Naruto, stared at him with a dumbfounded look, where a large sweat drop formed on the back of her head. Shunsui on the other had looked amused by the question and smiled a little. That's your question? Nanao cried out in disbelief. You want to know how old the captain commander is? Naruto replied, seeing no harm in the question. It's a legitimated question. I have a bet going on with some guys back home, where they say he was born around the time of the dinosaurs. I on the other hand think that he was born old and was there when the Big Bang happened. I tried asking the old fart himself when I met him in his office earlier, but he wouldn't give me a straight answer, so I thought I could get an answer out of this old guy, given how he used to be the old fart student. When Naruto finished, the captain of the 8th Division couldn't help but snort in amusement. He also found himself likening the hooded teen more, as he reminded him a lot of himself when he was younger. Unfortunately, Shunsui's lieutenant didn't share his amusement in Naruto's question. How dare you? Shouted Nanao, who once again ignored the fact that Naruto had a sword to her neck. Have you no respect? Nope. Replied Naruto simply, infuriating the bespectacled woman even more. That Captain Yamamoto is one of the most powerful and accomplished Shinigami to ever have lived. He practically built our way of life in the Serite, and was the one who founded the Spiritual Arts Academy. There is not another Shinigami in the entire history of the Soul Society who is more revered or more respected than him. Nanao of course continued her tirade about how great the head captain was for at least another 10 minutes, where by the time she was finished Naruto only response was giving her a confused look and saying huh. Oh sorry, I wasn't listening, did you say something? After hearing Naruto's response, Sunshui busted out laughing, and was struggling to breath from laughing so hard, which was only made worse when he saw the furious look on his lieutenant's face. Minato looked ready to kill the hooded teen and was red to the point where she had steam coming out from her ears. Eventually, after a few minutes, all joking and laughter was left aside, and the mood soon took a serious change. Well now, said Shunsui, after he calmed himself down, as much as I am enjoying this little conversation of ours, would you be so kind as release my lieutenant? I would hate for anything to happen to her. Getting the underlying threat from the elder Shinigami, Naruto put his senses on high alert, unsure what to expect from the man. Although Shunsui was not the type of man to act rashly, and would usually wait for his opponent to make the first move, it did not mean that the man wouldn't do something unexpected. In fact, from what Naruto had heard of him, it was impossible to know what Shunsui was actually thinking. He was simply that complex. I'm afraid that would be impossible, old man, as she is my only bargaining chip. If I were to let her go, I would stand little chance against you. Sighing in disappointment, Shunsui stared at Naruto with a sad look. Well, that is a real disappointment. I had hoped we could sit down like civilized people, and share a drink or two and continue our talk. Sorry, but I don't drink, and beside, my friend here needs to be treated. That is true, but there's a small problem. You cannot escape with your friend, while at the same time, continue to hold my lieutenant hostage, said Shunsui, who was surprised to see a small smile appear on Naruto's lips. I wouldn't be so sure of that, old man, after which two more hooded figures appeared in front of him, surprising both Shunsui and Nanao. Are these the rest of his comrades? Thought Shunsui when he saw two new hooded teens, who were dressed exactly like him. He of course knew he couldn't act without risking harm to Nanao, and therefore decided to do nothing. Go take the big guy to our hideout and treat his injuries as best you can. I'll come back and help as soon as I can, ordered Naruto, where the two figures nodded and lifted chat up and disappeared in a blur. Once the two figures were gone, Naruto spoke. Well, it's been fun, old man, but I think it's time I leave. After which he then let go Nanao's arm, but kept his sword to her throat, making sure that both she and her captain made no sudden movements. Seeing that Naruto was preparing to move away, Shunsui slowly prepared to make his move. Once Naruto was far enough away from his lieutenant, he would move in and take the hooded boy out. Just as Naruto was about to remove his sword from Nanao's throat, he leaned in on the female Shinigami's left ear and whispered, I especially enjoyed our time together, Nanao-chan. Maybe next time we can get to know each other a little better. Enter Bleach OST 1 number 6 Diddy for Daddy. Before Nanao could make any kind of response, Naruto gripped her right butt cheek and gave it a tight squeeze. No sooner had she felt Naruto's hand grip her rear, the lieutenant of the 8th Division turned atomic red and let out a high-pitched scream, before spinning around and punching the culprit in the face, sending him flying across the open court and crashing into the outer wall at the other end of the court, leaving a rather large dent on it. Ooh, man, that's got to hurt. Glad I'm not him, spoke a familiar voice. Turning to the direction of the voice, Nanao was shocked to see the hooded teen standing atop the outer wall on opposite end of the court. Damn, Nanao-chan, you've got a pretty mean right hook there. Ha. But how did you? You. An thoroughly confused Nanao said before she turned to the person she had hit, and was shocked to see her captain leaning against the wall, with dazed look on his face, and a rather large bruise on his left cheek. But how did you? He was right. And you were right. When did you? Said Nanao as she looked back and forth to her captain and Naruto, becoming more and more confused by the minute, as she tried to understand what happened. Seeing the dumb confused look on Nanao's face, Naruto just smirked. Unknown to the young lieutenant, he had used the replacement jutsu to replace himself with Shunsui at the last moment, catching the 8th Division captain completely off guard and unprepared for when his lieutenant mistakenly punched him and sent him flying. Sorry, trade secret, but maybe I'll tell you later. If you're nice to me, that is, said Naruto before giving her a quick wink and then disappearing using Shunpo. But not before saying catch you later, sweet cheeks, causing the lieutenant of the 8th Division to turn bright red again from embarrassment, where she then shouted out about what she would do to him if she ever saw him again. Shortly after Naruto left, Nanao raced over to her captain and helped him up onto his feet, apologizing profoundly for hitting him, before going on about what she would do to a certain perverted hooded Shinigami if she ever saw him again. Listening to his lieutenant, the captain of the 8th Division couldn't help but smile in amusement, especially when she let loose a string of curses that would have made even the vulgar members of the 11th Division blush. Things have certainly gotten a lot more interesting around here, Shunsui thought, while also wondering how Naruto was able to do that swapping technique with him. As Nanao helped him up, the captain of the 8th Division also made a mental note to ask Naruto if he saw him again. What it was like to cop a feel of Nanao's sexy ass, something he had wanted to do for years. Not long after successfully escaping Captain Shunsui and his tricked-off lieutenant, Naruto received word from his clones that they had arrived safely at their hideout. Thankfully Chad's injuries weren't life-threatening, but he was extremely weak as he had used up most of his spiritual energy in the fight and had hardly any left. If he was to survive, Naruto knew he would need to get some medical supplies to help Chad. Getting the supplies from the 4th Division had been tricky, even for Naruto, due to the large numbers of Shinigami wounded from all the fighting. The hospital was filled to capacity with members of the 4th Division running around the place. Infiltrating the hospital had been easy enough, since the large numbers of Shinigami made it impossible for anyone to keep up with everyone entering and leaving the hospital. Therefore no one would pay much attention to him, especially if he used a henge transformation to make himself look like a member of the 4th Division who had just left the building. The problem was finding the medical supply room, given how big the hospital was, making it difficult finding the room and getting what he needed. He couldn't even ask anyone, fearing that he would draw too much attention to himself. But after much searching, he finally found the medical supply room. After closing the door behind him and locking it, Naruto reverted back to his normal hooded cloak self, and went to search for what he needed, which thankfully didn't take long to find. But just as he was about to transform himself back into his disguise and leave, the door to the supply room suddenly opened, and a tall woman suddenly entered. The woman was slender and very youthful looking, with blue eyes and black hair, which tied up in a large braid in front. She wore the standard Shinigami captain uniform, but used an obi instead of the normal sash. Upon seeing the woman, Naruto cursed himself a million times over for not keeping his disguise up. Given the woman's appearance and where he was, it wasn't a huge leap to realize who the woman was, the captain of the 4th Division, Anohana Retsu, one of the last people Naruto ever wanted to confront. Both his mother and his uncle had warned him about Anohana, who was one of the oldest living Shinigami alive today. Second only to the head captain, and was regarded as the strongest female Shinigami to ever live, stronger than even his adopted mother Yuruchi. Also, despite her kind and gentle appearance, Anohana had an infamous reputation in the Soul Society, where most Shinigami, including captains, both feared and respected her. Even the members of the famed 11th Division were terrified of the woman and dreaded crossing her in any manner whatsoever. In terms of power and threat level, the woman was ranked as number 3 on Naruto's list, second only to Aizen and the head captain. Seeing that he was caught red-handed, Naruto looked around the room for any other possible escape routes. But unfortunately there was only one, and Anohana blocked it. As the elder woman studied him, with a look void of any emotion, Naruto tried to think of a way out of this mess. But every solution he could think up of them led up to him attacking Anohana, and Naruto knew what his chances were there. He knew that if he took someone like Anohana head-on, she would easily wipe the floor with him, without breaking so much as a sweat. But before Naruto could say or do anything, Anohana turned her back on him and started to walk out of the room. When you are finished gathering what you need, please close the door behind you. Once Anohana had left, Naruto was left staring at the open doorway where Anohana had just stood, with a dumb expression. What the fuck just happened? After a few more minutes of staring at the empty place, unsure of what just happened, Naruto returned to his disguised form with the supplies he needed, closing the door behind him as Anohana requested, and took off. After leaving the hospital and returning to his normal form, Naruto began to make his way to his hideout where Chad was located. But just as he was halfway there, he noticed that he was being followed by a group of people, and stopped on the flat roof of a small building. At first Naruto thought Anohana had sent them after him, but he quickly shook the thought away, since it made no sense for her to let him go the way she did, and then send people after him. Damn it, I've been so distracted by what happened with Anohana-san, I must not have suppressed my presence fully, and allowed them to sense me. Judging by how well they are covering their own presence and spiritual energy, they're likely on Mitsukido. Knowing he wouldn't be able to lose them anytime soon, Naruto created another clone of himself, and sent it with the medical supplies to Chad, while he dealt with the on-Mitsukido members. Shortly after he sent the clone off, Naruto found himself surrounded by 12 stealth force members. "Don't move," spoke one of the masked men. "By order of Head Captain Yamamoto and Central 46, you are under arrest." After hearing what the masked man had said, Naruto just smirked. Sorry, but I don't recognize the old fart's authority, or that babbling group of arrogant egomaniacs you call Central 46. Angered by Naruto's insults towards the head captain and Central 46, several of the Stealth Force members glared at Naruto, who just continued to smirk. "If you do not surrender peacefully, we have been authorized to use lethal force," stated the masked man, where he and the others drew their short swords. Smirking at the man's threat, Naruto disappeared in a blur, and before the rest of the Stealth Force knew what happened, let alone even act, Naruto reappeared underneath the leader and delivered a power elbow thrust to the man's stomach, causing him to keel over in pain from the force of the hit. As the team leader fell over and collapsed from the pain, Naruto stood up and said, "Well, if you've been authorized, then I suggest you do so. That is, if you can even keep up with me." With one of their leaders down, the rest of the Stealth Force members were quick to act. The first member tried to sneak up on Naruto and stab him in the back. But knowing how the members of the Onmitsukido fought, Naruto was already prepared for the sneak attack and ducked under the stab. He then grabbed the man's outstretched arm and kicked his feet from underneath, and flipped him over while still holding onto his arm, where he then twisted it, causing it snap and break. Letting go of the now screaming man, Naruto then jumped into the air to dodge 3 separate attacks from 3 other masked men. After dodging the attacks, Naruto took out several kunai from his side pouch and threw them, wounding 2 of the attackers in the shoulder and the 3rd in the leg. After which he then proceeded to knock out the 3 men with a series of sharp kicks and punches to the head. But no sooner had he dealt with the 3 men, he came under attack from a 5th member, who attacked him head-on and attempted to slash him. Seeing the attack, Naruto easily sidestepped the slash and then grabbed the man's arm, who actually seemed pleased by what he did. Glancing behind him, Naruto quickly realized that the man in front of him was a decoy, so that a second man could attack him from behind with a Kido spell. Knowing that couldn't avoid the attack in time, and with only seconds to act, Naruto spun the other man around and used him as a shield to block the attack, where the energy robes that his partner fired wrapped themselves around him. With another man down, 2 more Stealth Force members attacked Naruto, were like their comrades from earlier. The first member attempted to distract Naruto with a direct attack, while his partner attacked Naruto from behind. Already onto their plan, Naruto caught the first man's leg when he tried a spinning leg kick to Naruto's head, and then spun him around and into the second man, knocking both men out. Seeing that they were being picked apart one by the hooded teen, the remaining 5 Stealth Force members fired several Kido spells at him. But before they could hit, Naruto disappeared again using Shunpo. Too slow, Naruto whispered into one of the masked men's ear, who was too shocked to do anything. He then grabbed the man's face and slammed the back of his head onto the roof, after which Naruto performed a leg sweep, knocking another man off his feet, causing him to fall forward. But before he could even hit the ground, Naruto elbowed him in the back of the head, sending him face first into the roof. After taking another 2 down, Naruto used Shunpo to disappear again and reappear in front of the 3 remaining Stealth Force members, where he knocked out one of them with a reverse leg spin, and the other member with a straightforward punch to the face. The final member although put up a better fight, where he was forced to block a powerful kick to the side of the head with his right arm. For the next few minutes, Naruto, and the man, who Naruto guessed was the other leader of the group, fought in a fierce hand-to-hand battle, after Naruto knocked his sword out of his hand. "You're pretty good," Naruto remarked, after the leader blocked a palm strike from him and held him in a wrist lock. "Humph, I was taught by the best," the leader replied. "So was I," Naruto replied before headbutted the man in the face, catching him off guard and breaking his nose. "And I was also taught to fight dirty whenever possible." With his opponent now focused on his broken nose, Naruto quickly followed up with a swift knee between the legs, causing the masked Stealth Force member to keel over and wheeze out in pain, before being knocked out by a sharp kick to the head from Naruto. "Heh, not bad, that was actually a decent warm-up," remarked Naruto while brushing himself off and surveying the knocked-out Onmitsukido members. But before Naruto knew it, he found himself being stabbed from behind by a short blade, which was now sticking out of his stomach. Just as the assassin thought he was dead, Naruto faded away, leaving only his hooded coat, which now had a hole in the back. "Aw man, I really like that coat, do you know how pricey that was?" moaned Naruto, he now standing at the other end of the rooftop without his hooded coat, with an annoyed look. "Ha, not bad." "Not so bad yourself," replied Naruto with a smirk, as he stared at his would-be assassin, who turned out to be a young female captain. Looking around at the defeated Onmitsukido members, the young woman just scoffed, showing she wasn't impressed. "You have some skill, but don't think for 1 second that you are a match for me." How well, that pretty high praise coming from infamous captain of the 2nd Division, and commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukido unit, Soifun. Soifun was a relatively petite woman with grey eyes and black hair. Her hair was worn short with 2 long braids bound in white cloth, each ending in a large golden ring. She wore a traditional Shinigami captain's uniform with a sleeveless haori and a yellow obi tied around her waist, and wore her sword, which was now in her hand, behind her back. Also, instead of wearing the standard Shinigami sandals with tabi, she wore traditional Chinese shoes with ordinary white socks. "So you know of me?" said Soifin, narrowing her eyes, not liking the idea of someone know about her, when she knew nothing about them. "Oh, I know everything about you," said a grinning Naruto. Soifin, formerly Shaolin FNG of the FNG family, one of the lower noble houses affiliated with the Shihoin family. "You're the 9th generation of your family and the youngest of 6 siblings. You have 5 brothers, all of whom died during missions and credited for being a highly gifted fighter. You are the former student of the former captain of the 2nd Division, and commander-in-chief of the Onmitsukido unit, Shihoin Yoruchi. Your favorite food is fish and you like cats, especially black ones, and you dislike meat and a lot of other things, which are too many to mention, I'm afraid." When Naruto finished, he was pleased to see a stunned look on Soifin's face, who couldn't believe a stranger knew so much about her, more than anyone else in the Seirte. "Who the hell are you and how do you know so much?" demanded Soifin. "And how do you know Otsusemi, Cicada? With the exception of one person, only members of Onmitsukido are suspicious to know that technique." "Ah, well, that would be telling, and where would the fun be in that?" said Naruto. His grin grew, annoying Soifin further. "Then I guess and beat the information out of you," said Soifin as she appeared behind Naruto, who was barely able to just out of the way of her slash. "Shit, she's fast. Almost as fast as Ka-chan. I could barely keep up with her," thought Naruto as he landed at the opposite end of the rooftop. "Geez, it's not enough I met up with the old fart, I also meet with the captains of the 2nd, 4th and 8th divisions, all on the same day. How unlucky can I be, and that's not counting those other 3 I met earlier." After dodging Soifin's stab, Naruto went to draw his blade, but before he could reach it, Soifin appeared in front of him and delivered a sharp kick to the face, sending him flying off the rooftop and crashing to the alleyway below. "Fuck," cursed Naruto, as he struggled to his feet before leaping back to another fatal stab from Soifin, which would have gone right through his skull had it hit. "This just isn't my day." But not sooner had he evaded the stab, Soifin appeared again in front of him, and attempted to hit him with a roundhouse kick to the side of the head. This time though, Naruto was ready and caught her kick with his right hand. He then grabbed her leg and with his left arm, and swung her around before throwing her into a wall, several meters behind him. Recovering quickly, Soifin flipped herself in midair, so that her feet would hit the wall first, and then propelled herself forward, back towards Naruto, who then leaped into the air to avoid the 2nd Division's captain's attack, and landed back on another rooftop. But as soon as he was on the rooftop, Soifin appeared behind him again, and made another attempt to stab him in the back with her sword. Predicting what she was going to do, Naruto drew his Tanto sword and spun around, just as she appeared behind him, blocking the sword stab and pushing her back to the edge of the rooftop. Hoping to gain some sort of advantage against his opponent, Naruto then went on the offensive and attacked the female captain. For the next few minutes the 2 Shinigami fought other across the surrounding rooftops in a fierce high-speed sword fight, appearing just for an instant to clash blades, and then disappear just as quickly. After a while though, the 2 came to a stop in mid-air before jumping away from one another, and landing on the edge of 2 opposing rooftops. "What's wrong, getting tired already?" mocked Soifin as she smiled coldly at Naruto, who was panting and sweating quite a bit. Smirking back, Naruto retorted, "Heh, you wish, I'm just getting warmed up." But in reality he was starting tired. Despite his considerable speed, Soifin was still much faster, and it was taking everything her had to keep up with her. The only thing that had allowed him to keep up with her was the fact that they had been trained by the same person, which allowed Naruto to predict some of her movements and block them in time. But that would only work for so long, since in a drawn-out battle, Naruto knew he would lose. With that in mind, Naruto once again went to the offensive, hoping to exploit some kind of opening that would give him an edge. Using Shunpo, Naruto quickly disappeared and reappeared in front of Soifin, who jumped back to avoid his slash, and used Shunpo to move away, forcing Naruto to follow after her. This continued for several minutes where Naruto chased after the female captain across the rooftops, where each time she would block or avoid his sword strikes before using Shunpo to move away. Becoming frustrated with how things were going, Naruto attempted to catch her off guard with a strong upward kick to the chin with his right leg. Seeing the kick, Soifin blocked it with her own right leg, and then wrapped her leg around it, causing Naruto to lose her balance, allowing her to follow up with a powerful roundhouse kick to the face, sending Naruto crashing into the side of a nearby building wall. Seconds later, Soifun began to generate a large amount of yellow energy in the palm of her left hand, and shouted Bakudo number 30. Shitatsu Sansen, beat piercing triple beam. Using the energy, Soifun then drew an inverted yellow triangle, which generated several smaller triangles from its 3 points, which she then fired at Naruto, pinning him to the wall. Shit! Cried Naruto as she struggled to break free of the Kido spell. Seeing Naruto struggle against his binds, Soifun smirked coldly at the blonde boy. Humph, it's all over Ryoka, traveling evil, you were never a match for me. Deciding to finish Naruto off, Soifun raised her sword up and ran her fingers across the blade, while saying sting all enemies to death Suzumabachi, Hornet, causing the blade to glow white. When the glow died down, Naruto saw that Soifun's Zanpakuto had taken on the form of a black and gold gauntlet, with a small chain linking it to a stinger-like blade on Soifun's middle finger. So that's your Shikai, Suzumabachi, Naruto said, who had heard of the Zanpakuto's ability from his adopted mother. Suzumabachi was a dangerous Zanpakuto, which had deadly ability called Nijeki Kasatsu, death in 2 steps, whereas the name suggested, if he was hit in the same spot twice by her stinger, he was finished. Yes, and useless you answer my questions, it will be your end, Soifun replied as she stared down coldly at the blonde teen from the rooftop directly opposite the building wall that Naruto was pinned against. Smirking, Naruto simply retorted, "Heh, sorry, but you'll get nothing out of me." "So be it," replied the female captain before disappearing and reappearing in front of Naruto, with her stinger pointed forward. But just before she could hit the blonde in the chest, she noticed a large ball of red energy form in the palm of Naruto's left hand, which was pressed against the wall behind him. At the same time she then heard Naruto cry, "Hado number 31. Shakuho, red fire cannon." Right before the wall exploded, creating a large cloud of smoke and dust. Moments after the explosion, Soifun emerged from the smoke and landed back on the opposing rooftop, dirty, but unharmed. As the smoke and dust from the explosion died down, Soifun saw that Naruto was gone, and all that was left was a large hole in the wall. "Damn him," Soifun silently cursed. "I underestimated him. He used the Shakuho to destroy the wall behind him, allowing him to escape my Bakudo. He also probably waited until the last second for when I attacked, knowing I would get caught in the explosion, preventing me from following him." As Soifun continued to berate herself over her underestimation of Naruto, she suddenly sensed a presence behind her. Acting fast, the female captain quickly sidestepped the assailant's sword stab, who revealed himself to be Naruto, who had managed to maneuver around her. Taking hold of Naruto's now outstretched arm, Soifun kicked his feet out from underneath him and flipped him over her. But before she could finish him off with her Suzumabachi, Naruto disappeared again using Shunpo, where he once again appeared behind Soifun and attempted to slash her in the back. But again Soifun avoided the attack by jumping into the air, and barely managed to block yet another slash from Naruto with her gauntlet, when he tried to take advantage of her while she hung in midair. Wanting to keep Soifun on the defensive, Naruto pressed his attack, where he again disappeared and reappeared behind Soifun, and tried to slash her in the back. But like before, Soifun managed to block the attack. "Heh, so who's not a match for who now?" sneered Naruto, as he and Soifun continued to exchange swords blows, before forcing her to jump back to avoid a spinning kick from him. Pressing his advantage, Naruto raced forward, but just before he and Soifun could clash, Naruto used Shunpo to disappear and reappear behind her. Expecting this, Soifun spun around and ducked under Naruto's stab, and stabbed him twice in the chest with her stinger. But just when she thought she had him, Naruto faded away, revealing he had used Utsusemi, and the one she had hit was an afterimage. Catching a glimpse of something moving from her left, Soifun quickly spun around, and only just managed to block a powerful kick from Naruto with her left arm. But due to the strength that Naruto put to the attack, she was still sent skidding across the opposite end of the rooftop. Not only is he fast, but he's strong too. Just who the hell is this guy? Wondered Soifun, as her arm was slight numb from the kick. And who trained him? "So then, do you want call it quite, or are you hungry for more?" asked Naruto with a confident smirk. "Heh, don't get cocky brat, as I haven't even gotten serious yet," sneered Soifun before using Shunpo appear right above Naruto, who barely blocked her downward strike with his Tanto. Before Naruto could push her back or make any kind of a counterattack, Soifun once again disappeared and reappeared behind him, and hit him with a roundhouse kick to the side of the head, sending him flying back a few meters. Recovering quickly, Naruto landed back on his feet and wiped away the blood from his now bleeding lip. No sooner had wiped the blood away, Soifun appeared in front of him again and attempted to hit him in the chest with her stinger. But before she could hit him, Naruto disappeared and reappeared above her and attempted to stab her, but missed when Soifun spun to her right side and narrowly avoided the blade. After which Naruto raced over to her, where the two of them traded blows for several minutes before using Shunpo to simultaneously disappear, and reappeared several hundred meters above the Serite, opposing one another. For a moment or two the two Shinigami just stared at each, waiting to see who would make the first move. After a minute or so, Naruto made the first aggressive move, and raced forward and quickly rengaged the female captain, and for several minutes fought her in a fierce hand-to-hand battle. But after a while the faster and more experienced Soifun started to push him back and put him on the defensive. Shit, she not giving me time to even think of striking back, Naruto thought after blocking a strong spinning kick to the side. But no sooner had he done this, he saw Soifun bring up her gauntlet and attempt to stab him with her stinger. With only seconds to act, Naruto quickly used Shunpo to move back. Damn it, I still wasn't quick enough, the blonde silently cursed, as he looked down and saw a butterfly-shaped stamp appear on his chest. Seeing the stamp, the female captain smirked in triumphant. "Ha, it almost over, kid. If you're smart, you'll surrender now. Otherwise you'll die, thanks to my Zanpakuto's special ability." But to her surprise, Naruto didn't look afraid or worried. In fact, he simply smirked back. "Like I told you before, I have no intention of surrendering, and I already know all about your Zanpakuto's special ability. In addition to creating a rather deep wound when it stabs a person, the attack leaves a butterfly-shaped stamp on the victim's body. Spreading from the center of the wound, known as Hamonka, the cress flower, this stamp becomes the target of your second attack. If I am struck in the same spot that was hit the first time, I will die very quickly, which is why it is called Nijeki Kasatsu." When Naruto finished, Soifun was once again left shocked how Naruto knew so much about her. Just who the hell is he? Soifun thought in frustration. And how does he know so much? His fighting style is similar to that of the Onmitsukido. No, I'm wrong, it's more like my own, since he was able to predict and counter several of my moves, even though I am faster and more experienced than him. It's almost like we were taught together by the same. At that moment a look of realization and disbelief appeared of Soifun's face, as suddenly everything started to make sense. After which she then glared coldly at Naruto. "Tell me the name of the person who taught you how to fight." "Excuse me?" Naruto asked. "Tell me the name of the person who trained you," repeated Soifun with even more force in her voice, as her anger started to take hold of her. "You were trained by Shihoi Niruchi, weren't you?" "Who?" asked Naruto with a confused look, pretending not to know his adopted mother. "Don't pretend you don't know her. Your fighting style and technique are too similar to what is taught in the Onmitsukido, and you know too much about me and my abilities for you not to be taught by her." "Humph, so she figured it out. She's a lot smarter than I gave her credit. Not bad for a dog for the Soul Society," remarked Naruto before smirking back at Soifun. "Well, if you know the answer already, what's the point in me answering?" "Tell me where she is," demanded Soifun. "Where's who?" Naruto asked, once again pretending not to know anything. "Enough of these stupid games," yelled Soifun, as she was beginning to lose her patience. "Tell me where Shihoi Niruchi is. Did she come here with the rest of your group? Tell me." "Yesh, what the hell did Ka-chan do to get her panties in such a twist?" Naruto wondered, since he could see that Soifun was borderline obsessed with finding his adopted mother. "Well, if you're so interested, I'll tell you, but only if you ask nicely and say please." Annoyed by this, Soifun frowned and glared at the blonde. "So be it, I just have to take you in and force you to tell me what I want to know." After which she disappeared and reappeared right behind Naruto, who couldn't even follow her movement, and sent him flying to the ground with a powerful kick. Shit, she wasn't kidding when she said she wasn't being serious earlier. I couldn't keep up with her speeds, Naruto thought after recovering from the kick and stopping himself in midair. But before he could ponder on the matter further, Naruto saw Soifun flying straight towards him with her stringer pointed forward. Acting fast, Naruto quickly brought up his left free hand and cried Bakudo number 8. Siki, way of binding no. 8 repulse. Where a small blue orb appeared in front of his hand and blocked Soifun's stinger, and repelled her back. "So he knows Kido as well," Soifun remarked after recovering from being forced back by Naruto's barrier. "Well then, let's see just how well Uruchi has trained him," thought Soifun as a cold smirk began to form on her lips. She then pointed her right index finger at Naruto and cried, "Bakudo, number 61. Rikujikoro, way of binding number 61 6 rods prison of light." After declaring her attack, 6 beams of light shot out of her finger and fly straight for Naruto, who quickly used Shunpo to avoid them. But no sooner had he reappeared, Soifun was already a step ahead of him, and appeared right behind at the same moment, and wrapped her arms around him, with her stinger pointed at his neck. "You're not the only one who can predict moves," whispered Soifin into Naruto's ears, only to be surprised when he faded away, revealing he had been an after-image. Upon realizing she had been tricked, Soifin caught a glimpse of light from the corner of her eye, and turned to see a yellow beam of light in the form of a robe, flying towards her. With no time to spare, Soifin used Shunpo again to avoid the energy robe, after which she reappeared several meters away from where Naruto was and fired a Shakuho spell at him. Seeing the attack, Naruto quickly brought up his left arm and cried Bakudo number 54 Shurido, way of binding number 54 the shield, where a light green barrier appeared and blocked the attack. But after blocking the attack, Soifin appeared behind him, where Naruto then realized that her Shakuho spell had been a diversion, allowing the female captain to sneak up behind him. "Fuck," thought Naruto as he moved away from the 2nd Division captain, before glancing at his back. Although he had been able to move away at the last possible moment, Soifin had still be able to land a glancing hit at his back, where he saw a butterfly-shaped stamp forming on his back. "I can't afford to be caught off guard like that again. If I do, I'm finished." Knowing how dangerous it was for him now in getting too close to Soifin, Naruto decided to change tactics and keep his distance. He then brought up his left free hand, and aimed the palm of his hand at Soifin, and cried Hato number 33. Sakatsui, way of destruction number 33 blue fire, crashed down, firing a massive blast of blue fire at the female captain. Due to the sheer speed and width of the attack, Soifin barely managed to avoid the deadly Hato spell, but still received a small burn on her right shoulder. Unwilling to let Naruto to let off another blast like that, Soifin quickly flew forward him with the intent of finish him off with one hit, ignoring the fact that she wanted to question him. But before she could hit him, Naruto shouted Bakudo number 81. Denku, way of binding number 81 splitting void, creating a clear, see-through barrier in front of him, blocking Soifin's attack, where a black butterfly-shaped stamp formed in front of the barrier. After blocking the attack, Naruto then used Bakudo number 63. Seijo Sabaku, way of binding number 63 locking bondage stripes, creating a thick energy rope from his hands that moved around the barrier, wrapping itself around the female captain. But before it could completely ensnare Soifin, the female captain used Shunpo to escape the energy rope, and reappeared several meters away from Naruto. This shouldn't be possible. How can he use a level 81 Kido spell without incantations? And that attack he used earlier was enormous. It actually might have killed me had it hit. Just what has Uruchi been teaching him? Realizing just how much she had been underestimating Naruto, Soifin knew she could no longer afford to take any more chance with him. Wanting to finish things quickly, Soifin decided to use her speed clone technique, helping to hide herself within the clones, and catch Naruto off guard by using the clones as distractions, allowing her to end the fight with one blow. When Naruto first saw Soifin and her clones, the young blonde at first thought she had used Kage Bunshin, Shadow Clone, but quickly realized that the clones were in fact after images. Well, that's a new one. She using her high Shunpo skill to create copies of herself. It's like a more advanced version of Utsusemi, the blonde boy silently remarked. After which he then wondered if he could somehow get Soifin to teach him the technique later on, seeing lots of uses for it. But before he could comment further on the technique, Soifin and her copies moved forward and flew towards him. Unable to tell which one was the real Soifin, Naruto quickly formed an energy rob in his right hand, and cried Bakudo 62. Hyaparankan, way of binding no. 200 steps fence, before throwing the rod, which then multiplied into other rods that went through the majority of the copies, revealing the real Soifin, who was forced to move to avoid them. After revealing which one was the real Soifin, Naruto immediately used Shunpo to move behind Soifin. But no sooner had he appeared behind her, Soifin spun around and kicked Naruto in the side, sending him flying. Before Naruto could even recover from the kick, the female captain followed up with Tenrin, Orchid Sky, creating tornado-like blast from her hand, sending the blonde teen crashing down onto an open court. Believing she had finally defeated the blonde, Soifin used her Shunpo again to appear next to the unconscious Naruto. "It's over," said Soifin, but just as she was about to pick him up, Naruto suddenly turned into a large piece of rubble. "What the?" said the female captain, before it jumped into air to avoid several kunai that came from above. After landing back on the ground, Soifin quickly searched the surrounding area, and soon found Naruto at the opposite end of the court, where he then threw several shuriken at her, before forming symbols with his hands. "What's he doing?" thought Soifin, before Naruto brought his hands to his mouth and roared Fujin. Fujin no Hoko, wind style. Wind god's roar. Releasing a powerful tornado-like blast from his mouth. That combined with his shuriken, drastically increasing their speed and power as they flew towards Soifin. Eh? What sort of keto is that? Cried Soifin while jumping to her right to avoid the powerful wind attack, although still received a large cut on her left arm from one of the high-speed shuriken. After avoiding the attack, Soifin looked on in disbelief, and the level of damage the attack had done to the courtyard, where it looked as if he had been hit by a hurricane, as much of the ground had been torn up by the wind blast. But before she could even think on the matter further, Soifin was once again forced to move when Naruto fired another wind blast. Although not as powerful as the one before, it was still dangerous. This isn't good. I can't afford to be put on the defensive like this, Soifin thought, but before she could make any move, Naruto appeared behind her with his sword draw. Sensing danger, Soifin quickly spun around and blocked the sword slash with her gauntlet, but as soon as she had done this, Naruto jumped back and swung his blade horizontally while yelling Shinkiken, vacuum sword, creating an arc-shaped blade of wind that flew towards her. With only seconds to act, Soifin brought up her gauntlet and blocked the wind arc, although received several cuts on her arms and face for her trouble. At the same time, Naruto smirked in victory, and silently thanked his mother for going to all the trouble in helping him learn the ninja arts. During his training years at Urahara's shop, his adopted mother traveled back and forth to the shinobi world, gathering books, scrolls and other information that Urahara required to further understand chakra and the shinobi arts, and help Naruto learn them, knowing how powerful and useful they could be in battle. After learning that he had an affinity to Futon ninjutsu, Yuruchi traveled to different villages, and borrowed several scrolls from various shinobi villages on Futon ninjutsu, and helped him learn and master them. Knowing that he had the advantage when fighting from the distance, Naruto sheathed his sword again and began to form hand seals again. After which he then inhaled deeply and thought Futon, Shinkuha, wind style, vacuum wave, before releasing several high-speed wind blades that covered much of the area in front of him. But when the attack ended, Soifin, who had used Shunpo to avoid the attack, appeared behind him and delivered a sharp kick to the back, sending him flying forward. Recovering quickly, Naruto flipped himself in mid-air and then spun around, so that he would be facing Soifin. Shit, I got careless. If she had wanted to, she could have finished me off by hitting me again in the stamp-in by back. Guess it's a good thing that she wants me alive. I don't know what kind of strange techniques you are using, but they will do you little good, since despite their power, they have a serious weakness, spoke Soifin as she stared at Naruto. From what I can tell, to preform them you need to form hand symbols, which takes time, meaning that until you are finished you are vulnerable to attack. Not good, thought Naruto, as he had hoped that Soifin would miss that key weakness, since as Soifin said, the greatest weakness for ninjutsu was the time it took to form hand seals. But just when Naruto thought things couldn't get any worse, 50 members of the Onmitsukido arrived. Fuck me, Naruto cursed, when he saw that not only was he now outnumbered, but was surrounded as well. Captain, cried the lieutenant of the 2nd Division, an overweight man by the name of Amida Nakata Roman Yashi Amenasuke Marichio, who was racing over to his captain. Amida was a large man with black hair, and wore what seemed to be expensive, personalized jewelry on his thick fingers. He wore the standard Shinigami robes with the attention of a large purple color. See, Captain, are you alright, Captain? I mean, what have you gotten yourself into this time? Captain, from the look of things you must be injured, said Amida, and continued to ramble on about how injured Soifin looked. Having enough of her lieutenant's blabbering, Soifin punched him hard in nose, causing him to fall on his rear. Don't make such a big fuss over nothing, you're stifling me. But Captain, moaned the man, but before he could say anything, Soifin spoke up again. These injuries are nothing, besides. Turning your back on your enemy at any time during battle is unforgivable, even if your superior is hurt. But Captain, that is why we came here. We sensed your spiritual presence, and saw you battling that guy, and it looked like. Said Amida before becoming nervous when he saw Soifin narrow her eyes. Looked like what? Soifin asked in danger tone, which told the overweight Shinigami to choose his words carefully. Gulping audibly, the lieutenant slowly spoke. Well, it looked like you were having a little trouble with this guy, and that you could do with some Helgla. But before he could finish, she was again punched in the nose by Soifin. You idiot, who ordered you to help? Rounded Soifin. I'm sorry, Captain, I just thought. That is exactly the problem, you don't think, you follow orders, that's it. Rounded Soifin, before shaking her head and sighing in annoyance. You're fine if you want to make yourself somewhat useful. You restrain that Ryoka and take him in for interrogation, as he has information that I want. Yes, ma'am, replied Amida, as he slowly picked himself up from the ground. Oh, you're not very nice to your subordinate over there. He was only worried about you, said Naruto, feigning concern, while analyzing his situation and thinking of what he should do next. I don't like a cozy atmosphere in my division, in order to train effectively. I think that subordinates and superiors should be at odds with one another. I see, replied Naruto without any emotion. But before he could say anything more, Amida spoke up. Alright you punk, as you can see you're completely outnumbered, so why don't you yourself a favor and surrender? Heh, sorry lard ass, but like I told your boss earlier, I have no intention of surrender to you lapdogs. Lard ass. Amida repeated Angela, which only grew when he heard some snickering from some of the other members of the Onmitsukido. You punk, I'm not fat, I'm just full body, not that a peasant like you could understand. Heh, whatever helps you sleep at night, lard ass, mocked Naruto, but if you ask me, wealth just makes you soft and weak. Angered by this, Amida was about to retort, but before he could cut her so much as a word, Naruto spoke again. Oh, and about me being outnumbered, I wouldn't be so sure of that, where he then formed a single hand seal and cried, Tajikage Bunshin no Jutsu, multiple shadow clone technique. After which the entire courtyard became filled with smoke. When the smoke dissipated, Soifun and her subordinates were shocked to find that they were now surrounded by several hundred Narutos, who all now had their Tanto swords drawn. Now then, you were saying about me being outnumbered, said all clones together. WWH, what going on here? How is he doing this? Cried a now panicking Amida. At the same time, a confused and frustrated look appeared on Soifun's face. How is this even possible? Even if he was using the same kind cloning technique as me, there's no way he should be able to create so many copies of himself with just Shunpo. Not to mention these ones actually look solid. Just what sort of techniques did Yuruchi teach him? After a moment or two of staring angrily at the Naruto clones, Soifun quickly turned to her subordinates. Just what the hell are you lot doing? Stop gawking and attack. With a chorus of "Hi!" from her men, the members of Onmitsukido drew their swords and attacked, where a massive battle ensued between Naruto's clones and the Onmitsukido. As the battle progressed, Naruto's clones proved to an even match for the Onmitsukido, and defeated many of its members. But at the same time, Onmitsukido were holding their own, using their high teamwork skill and honed fighting skill to destroy many of Naruto's clones. Eventually though, after knocking out several members of the Onmitsukido, the real Naruto came across Amida, who attempted to stab him behind in the back. Jumping away from the stab, Naruto quickly spun around and kicked the overweight Shinigami in the nose, leaving a rather large footprint on his face. Ow. My beautiful face. You damn bastard. Crush him, Jujetsuburi, 5-formed head. Roared Amida, where he unleashed his Zanpakuto's Shikai, taking the form of an oversized spiked ball attached to a long chain. But before he could even attack, Naruto destroyed his Zanpakuto and crippled Amida with one single powerful punch to the stomach, causing the lieutenant of the 2nd Division to keel over in pain. Sorry lard ass, but I simply don't have the time to mess around with you, said Naruto before sending Amida flying into two other Onmitsukido members, with a single roundhouse kick to the side of the head. Moments after defeating Amida, Soifun suddenly appeared behind Naruto and hit him in the back of the neck. But as soon as she had hit him, Naruto exploded into a puff of smoke, indicating that he had replaced himself with a clone. Once the clone was destroyed, the real Naruto appeared behind her and slashed Soifun in the back. Although as soon as he did, Soifun faded away, revealing she was an afterimage. Heh, did really think you get me with a Shunpo, that predictable, said Soifun as she appeared behind him again, with her stinger pointed at the back of his head. But just when she believed she had him, Naruto faded away, revealing that he too was an afterimage. Heh, I think I should be the one saying that, retorted Naruto, who reappeared in front of her, several feet away. But still, he continued, ignoring the battle that was waging around them. I think it's time that I show you what I am really capable of, said Naruto as he sheathed his Tanto sword and took out his Zanpakuto from behind his back. What is that? This is my Zanpakuto. Your Zanpakuto, but I thought. Nope, that's just a regular sword. Unfortunately, when my Zanpakuto is in its sealed form, it has no blade, making it pretty useless in a fight. So this entire time he had been fighting without his Zanpakuto. Soifun thought with a hint of anger, feeling slightly insulted by the fact. Enter Bleachos. Senna. Now, then allow me show you something special, said Naruto as he held out his Zanpakuto. All winds, now blow, become my shield, my sword, and unleash your fury. Kachi, spring wind. Once Naruto had said his release command, one of the gems of his sword hilt glowed white, and a massive burst of spiritual power erupted from Naruto, forcing Soifun and those nearby to take a step back in surprise. after which a small spinning tornado erupted from the ground, blowing several clones and Mitsukido members away, and blocking everyone's view of Naruto. At the same time, the Soifin and the others noticed that storm clouds had formed above them, making it look like it was going to rain soon. What's going on? His spiritual energy is incredible. It's easily at the level of a captain, thought Soifin as she shielded her face with her arm. From looking at the sky, it also seems that his Shikai can affect the weather, just like Captain Hitsugaya's in Apakudo. Shortly after, the large tornado began to die down and dissipate, revealing Naruto, but to their surprise, they saw a sword or weapon in his hand, which confused the others. At least until Soifin noticed a metal finger claw with a sharp tip on his right index finger. What the? Don't tell me that's the release form of his Zanpakuto, asked Amida in a mocking tone, after recovering from his defeat by Naruto. That thing couldn't even hurt a fly. You fool, shouted Soifin, but before she could even say anything further, Naruto raised his right hand, said Kamikaze, Divine Wind, while waving his hand. No sooner had he said this, a massive explosion of wind erupted from around Naruto, destroying the entire courtyard, along the surrounding buildings. Even Naruto's clones and the Mitsukido members they were fighting were caught up in the explosion, where they were all scattered and blown away in different direction. And Bleachos. Senna. When the wind died down, Soifin reappeared directly above Naruto, who was still standing in the middle of the now destroyed courtyard, surrounded debris. The only part of the courtyard that seemed to be intact was the spot that Naruto was standing in. Moments after the attack ended, Naruto quickly disappeared and reappeared over the Serite, directly opposite Soifin, who seemed surprised by Naruto's speed, as she had trouble following his movements. Frowning at this, Soifin knew that this would make things difficult. Not only does his Zanpakuto give him immense destructive power, but it also seems to increase his speed as well. So that's your Zanpakuto Sekai? Soifin asked. Yep, Naruto replied, holding up his finger claw. This is my Zanpakuto Kachi, but don't let its size fool you, it's very powerful. Yes, I can see that, replied Soifin, glancing down at the destroyed courtyard and buildings again. Judging by the attack you just used, I assuming that it is a wind type Zanpakuto. Right again, Kachi gives me the power to manipulate the wind, and if you're not careful, you'll regret it, explained Naruto, who then thought back to when he first awakened Kachi's power. Enter flashback. Once again, a now 9-year-old Naruto was running around the underground training area underneath Urahara Kisuke's shop, avoiding various different Kido blasts. His opponent this time was the former captain of the Kido court Tsukubishi Tessai, who like Urahara Kisuke, was a childhood friend of his adopted mother. Although Tessai was not as strong as Urasei and Kisuke, that did not mean that Tessai was not powerful in her right. Being the former captain of the Kido Corporation, Tessai was a Kido master, meaning he could perform Kido spells at levels that most captains could never hope to do, and new ones that were unknown to them. Not only that, but Tessai also possessed a considerable amount of strength and durability, where not too long ago, he nearly hit the spiky-haired blonde with a small bladder he threw, when he was 50 meters away. Not to mention the guy could take his strongest punches like they were nothing. In fact, Naruto could also swear he was made out of steel, given how much his fist hurt from punching him in the chest. Needless to say, Naruto knew he was in serious trouble and needed to unlock his last Zanpakuto spirit. After ducking behind a large boulder to avoid Tessai energy ropes, Naruto he heard Tessai voice shout out, Hato number 31. Shakuho. Acting fast, Naruto quickly jumped forward and narrowly avoided the red energy blast, which annihilated the small boulder he had been hiding behind. As the smoke and dust from the blast filled the surrounding space, and now dirty Naruto was coughing heavily from smoke dust. Moments after the blast, Naruto saw the massive figure of Tessai slowly walking towards him from the cloud of smoke and dust, eerily reminding Naruto of a film he saw with his mother one time, which was about a futuristic invincible time-traveling android from the future. Author's note. Any guesses who? Cough, cough. Hey, watch it, Uncle Mustache, you nearly got me with that blast, yelled Naruto when he saw the muscular man. My apologies, Naruto Dono, but both Kisuke-sama and Urachi-sama stated, I could not go easy with you in your training. They didn't mean you had to kill me. And if something happens to me, Ka-chan will kick your ass, retorted Naruto, hoping the threat of his mother's anger would work, since his mother's wrath was a terrible sight to behold, something he and his uncle Kisuke knew firsthand. Do not worry, Naruto-san, Urachi-sama, explain to me clearly that so long as I do not kill you, anything else that happens to you is acceptable. And that's supposed to comfort me, shouted Naruto before being forced to run for his life. Elsewhere in the Urahara shop, a certain black cat was curled up on a large cushion enjoying a peaceful cat nap until it was woken by a loud boom, which was then followed by a familiar voice shouting Kaya Kayan. Smirking, the black cat yawned and stretched its long legs before falling back to sleep again. For the next few minutes Naruto continued to dodge Keto Blast after Keto Blast, and although he knew the Tessai was not trying to kill him, he knew those blasts would hurt a lot. After a while though, Naruto suddenly heard a gentle female voice speaking inside his head. My, you certainly are in quite a predicament. Ha! Thought Naruto, but before he could put any more thought on the matter, his vision began to fade and everything went dark inside Naruto's mind. Moments after his vision went, it returned, although this time he found himself standing atop a yellow pyramid, surrounded by water. Shortly after, Naruto saw white feathers slowly falling down from the sky. Looking up to the cloudy sky, Naruto saw a lone figure flying down to him. At first Naruto thought it was a bird, but as the figure drew closer, he saw that it was a woman with white wings. The woman was extremely beautiful, with long golden hair that reached down below her shoulders. Her attire consisted of a simple pale blue dress top, and a matching blue cloak with metal shoulder pads and bright blue pants. She also wore a pair of gold and brown boots, along with matching gold armbands and a pair of oval-shaped earrings, and a small short sword around her waist. Upon seeing the woman, Naruto at first thought she was an angel. She certainly fitted the description and was more than beautiful enough to be called one. Hello again Naruto-kun, said the woman in the same gentle voice, as she smiled kindly down at him. When the woman spoke his name, Naruto was about to ask who she was, but then remembered his earlier meeting with Watatsumi, who told him that Zanpakuto could take any form they wished, including humanoid forms. Are you that nice giant bird lady from before? I am, replied the woman, whose smile grew, which radiated her beauty even further. Can I know your name now? Naruto asked. Yes, I believe that you are now ready. I have been watching you throughout your trails and learning Watatsumi and Ryo's names and using their powers. Your personality is like the wind, wild, carefree, gentle at times, but fierce when needed and desire power only to protect others. That is why I have already accepted you as my master. I will lead you my power and my wings to protect you from harm. Alright. Cheered Naruto, let's show Uncle Mustache, not to mess with us. Yes, let's not at the females Napakuto. Real world. After returning to the real world, Naruto turned around to face Tessai, who fired a yellow blast of energy from his hands. Seeing the energy blast, Naruto quickly brought up his Zanpakuto hilt. As he did, he heard Koichi's gentle voice speak to him. Naruto-kun, do you trust me to protect you? I do, replied Naruto. Good, now let him see how powerful the wind truly is. Nodding, Naruto then raised his Zenkato hilt high and spoke, all winds, now blow, become my shield, my sword and unleash your fury. Kachi. Once Naruto finished saying his release command, one of the gems of his sword hilt glowed white, and a massive burst of spiritual power erupted from Naruto, blocking the Keto Blast. After which a small spinning tornado erupted from the ground around Naruto. The wind was so strong that it actually pushed Tessai back a few feet, and was forced to shield his face with his arms from the powerful wind and the dust that was being blown around. Such power. Shortly after the tornado died down, revealing Naruto. At the same time Tessai noticed a small metal claw on his right index finger. Could that be his Zanpakuto Shikai? Pondered the former Keto Corporation captain. If so, then let us see how well he can use it, where he then raised his right arm and shouted, Hado number 33. Sakatsu. After shouting, the speed and large blast of blue flame erupted from Tessai's hand and within seconds enveloped the blonde boy who didn't even move. No? Cried Tessai, fearing the worst. Why didn't he avoid it? He should have been able to. But before he could finish his sentence, he felt a small prod on the back of his neck. Glancing around, Tessai was surprised to see a smiling Naruto floating in midair. I got you, Uncle Mustache. Looks like I win. Did he just use Shunpo? Thought a confused Tessai. No, he wasn't that fast, and it wouldn't explain why he is floating now. As if reading his mind, the young boy spoke. It's called Tipo, air step, and it's one of Kachi's special abilities. See? Tipo? Repeated Tessai, which confirmed what he had been thinking, a fitting name, and I am assuming that Kachi is your Zanpakuto's name. Where he received a nod from Naruto, who's slowly floating back to the ground, while deactivating his Zanpakuto. Also fitting, you have done well Naruto-san, your mother will be proud, the large man said, knowing that Yurichi would indeed proud of her son. Not only had he unlocked his final Zanpakuto spirit, but he had also managed to stay conscious after deactivating it, showing his growing strength. Thanks, said Naruto, who despite being fairly worn out from releasing Koichi, was quite pleased with himself. Seeing how tired Naruto was, Tessai lifted the young boy up onto his shoulders, carried him back up to the shop, and tell Yurichi the good news. Flashback ends. So, now that we have both released our Zanpakuto's Shikai, shall we finally get serious? Asked Naruto, smirking a little. In response, Soifin simply smirked back and said, "Heh, fine with me." Enter Bleachos. Power to strive. As the two Shinigami faced off above the Serite, the two of them began to release large amounts of their spiritual power, which could felt from all around Serite. Moments later, the two Shinigami disappeared, and for the next few minutes they began a fierce high-speed battle across the Serite. After dodging high-speed strike from Naruto with his claw finger, Soifin prepared to attack him on his blind side, but before she could even move, she lost sight of him for a moment, where he reappeared behind her and went to kick her in the side. But thanks to her many years of the battlefield, she was able to act in time to avoid the kick and move several feet away. That was close. Somehow his Shikai has increased his speed dramatically, and for a moment I lost sight of him. But before Soifin could ponder on Naruto's newfound increased speed further, she was forced on the defensive again, as Naruto began attacking her with a series of high-speed kicks and punches. But eventually, after a minute of dodging attacks, Soifin found an opening and went to strike Naruto in the head with her stinger, forcing him to jump back. "Nice one, you nearly got me there," said Naruto before he went back on the attack, and tried to strike her in the chest with his finger claw, only to have it pushed away by Soifin. Naruto then quickly spun around and went to attack her on her left side, although was blocked again by Soifin. But as soon as she had blocked him, Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind her, and went to strike her in the back of the neck with his finger claw. But missed again as Soifin used her shunpo to move away and reappear directly opposite him. Undeterred, Naruto continued on the offensive and charged head-on, in an attempt to stab her in the chest. Seeing this, Soifin smirked and waited until the last second to avoid the attack and used shunpo to disappear and appear on Naruto's unguarded left. "You're mine now," Sophie cried as she moved to strike him in the neck. But just as her stinger was an inch from touching him, her attack was suddenly halted and was then blasted back several meters away. "What the hell just happened?" thought Soifin in surprise. "I had him, but somehow he blocked my attack and pushed me away." At the same time, when Naruto turned around to face Soifin, he thanked his Zanpakuto spirit for helping him. "Think, Scotchy, if you hadn't activated your K's no Yoroi, Armor of Wind, around me when you did, I would have been finished. Think nothing of it, Naruto-kun, as I told you, my wings will always protect you, but still you need to be more careful. The Shinigami you are fighting is a skilled and dangerous opponent, and if you give her an opportunity, you will lose." "Yay, I know, and I won't," replied Naruto before moving in to attack again. For the next few minutes, Naruto and Soifin continued to fight one another in a vicious hand-to-hand battle. But no matter how many attacks Soifin made, none of her attacks could connect with Naruto, and was pushed back each time by Naruto's wind defense, sometimes even with several cuts on her arms or legs. Damn it," cursed Soifin after being forced back again, this time with a small laceration on her right arm. Not only does his Zenkato enhance his speed, it also creates some kind of wind barrier around him, protecting him from harm. "If that the case," continued Soifin, "then let's see him defend against this." Where she raised her hand and shouted Hado number 58. "Tenrin, Way of Destruction number 58, Orchid Sky." After which a massive tornado-like blast erupted from the palm of her hand, and flew straight for Naruto. Seeing the attack, Naruto quickly countered with his Fujin no Hoko, releasing a powerful tornado-like blast from his mouth, countering Soifin's. When the two attacks clashed, a battle for dominance began, where each attack tried to push the other back. Unwilling to lose a battle in wind, Naruto added even more chakra to his attack, completely overpowering Soifin's attack, and sped right to her, which she only narrowly avoided using shunpo. And Bleachos. Power to strive. "Damn it, I can't believe he actually overpowered my Tenrin like that," thought Soifin after avoiding Naruto's attack. But as soon as she reappeared, she caught a glimpse of something moving behind her. Turning around, Soifin saw Naruto appear behind her with his right arm covered in a small twister while yelling Senpuken, Whirlwind Sword. Acting fast, Soifin raised her gauntlet to block the attack, but the force of the attack was so powerful that it actually sent the captain of the 2nd Division crashing down into a large building below them. After crashing into the building, Soifin struggled to pick herself up, ignoring her body's cry of pain. No sooner had she gotten back onto her feet, she was forced to jump back into their air when she saw Naruto fire a massive wind arcator, which sliced right through the large building like it was nothing. Moments afterwards, Soifun reappeared over the now collapsing building, but as soon as she did, Naruto appeared in front of her, with his right arm covered in another small tornado, and shouted Senpuken, while thrusting his attack into Soifun's stomach. Acting on pure instinct, Soifun leaped back to avoid the lethal part of the attack, but was unable to completely avoid it, and was hit with the residual force of the attack, pushing her back several meters. To her credit though, Soifun remained standing as she coughed up some blood from the hit, placing her left hand over her now injured stomach, covering the large hole in her top that showed her stomach. Seeing that Soifun was injured, Naruto wasted no time in taking advantage of the situation and moved forward, intending to finish the battle once and for all. Down below, the scattered and injured Mitsukido members slowly began to pick themselves up or help those who could not. At the same time, many of them were watching the battle above them. Although most could not keep up with Soifun and Naruto's high-speed movements, and could only wait for them to reappear. Incredible, what a battle! So the rumors are true, there really is a person among the Ryoka, who has the power to rival a captain, said one of the stealth force members after witnessing Naruto's last attack. Yay, it's amazing, look at them, even from down here I can barely breathe under their spiritual pressure, said another member. But shouldn't we help the captain? The first member, after seeing Soifun's injury. No, said the second member, we would only get in the captain's way, this battle is out of our league. Besides, remember the captain's rule, if an enemy is too powerful to take on, then run and live to fight another day, even if you have to abandon a comrade to do so. At the same time, not far from where the two Mitsukido members were, the lieutenant of the 2nd Division, Amida Nakataro Yashi Amenasuke Marichio, was currently stuck underneath some rubble, with his legs hanging up in the air. Hey, is anyone out there? I need some help here. Come on guys, I want to know what's happening as well. Sadly though for the lieutenant of the 2nd Division, his cries for help were for naught, as his comrades were too distracted with the battle above them to notice, let alone hear his cries. As the battle between Soifun and Naruto continued, the blonde Shinigami was forced to admit that the female captain was a lot tougher than he had imagined. Despite her injuries, Soifun was more than able to hold her own against him, and was even able to land in some strikes of her own, where his legs and arms were now decorated with her butterfly-shaped mark. Realizing the situation he was in, Naruto attempted to destroy Soifun's Zanpakuto by channeling a large amount of the surrounding wind around his right arm, and turning it into a powerful cutting blade. But to Naruto's surprise, the gauntlet withstood his attack, allowing Soifun to push him back. Man, that gauntlet of hers is strong. I didn't think it would be able to block my Fujinken, Wind God's sword, Naruto thought as he jumped away from Soifun to reanalyze the situation and catch his breath. Damn it, I can't afford to drag this on anymore, if this keeps going any longer, more reinforcements could arrive, and if happens I'm finished. I need to end this now. Knowing what he needed to do next, Naruto formed a single-hand seal and created over 100 shadow clones, and readied themselves for battle, drawing their kunai, shuriken and swords. At the same time, Soifun frowned when she saw the small army of Naruto clones. What's he up to this time? Is he trying to overwhelm me with numbers? But before Soifun could ponder further on what Naruto was up to, the blonde Shinigami ordered his clones to attack, but had 10 of them stay back to protect him. Within seconds, Naruto's clones closed in on the captain of Squad 2 from all sides, and attacked. Deciding to fight fire with fire, Soifun used her own clone technique to create copies of herself, and although her clones were just after images, and could not make physical contact like Naruto's, they would at least provide for effective distractions, and allow her to fight back. From his position, Naruto watched as Soifun engaged his clones, using her superior speed to create after-images of herself, making it difficult for his clones to isolate and corner her. As the battle progressed, Naruto watched as Soifun destroyed a third of his clones within minutes. But before long the clones' numbers began to take effect, where they started coordinating their attacks better and used Kido and Bakudo spells to hold her off and put her on the defensive. Seeing that his clones were keeping Soifun at bay, Naruto brought his finger claw up to his face, and began to focus on gathering his remaining spiritual energy for what he had planned, leaving his 10 remaining clones to protect him from any possible attacks. After a few minutes, Naruto finished gathering the necessary spiritual energy, causing the sky darken again, and was covered with storm clouds. But before he could finish preforming his attack, a massive explosion of spiritual energy suddenly erupted from where his clones were fighting Soifun. Looking up, Naruto was shocked to find all the clones had been destroyed by Soifin. His body now seemed to be surrounded by what looked to be wind currents, which seemed to be concentrated around her right arm. Upon seeing Soifin's new appearance, Naruto froze in shock, recognizing the technique that his mother created. Shinko, flash cry. She knows Shunko. But how? Ka-chan never taught it to anyone. She won't even teach me it. Fuck, thought Naruto when he saw Soifin racing towards him at phenomenal speed, covered in spiritual energy. Stop her. Acting fast, the remaining 10 clones quickly created a row of Danku barriers in front of Soifin, who shattered through the majority of them using her Shunko, hardly slowing down. But by the time she reached the last barrier, she was stopped by it, which had been enhanced by the last clone, who used a trailing incantation to enhance the barrier, a peeling incantation afterwards, rather than before, like most casters do, making it stronger. Enter Bleach Os, stand up, be strong. With Soifin now momentarily halted, Naruto finished the necessary requirements for his technique, and pointed his finger claw up into the air, causing the wind to blow harder, and the storm clouds to rumble, like thunder. I have to hand it to you, to Soifin-chan, you're a lot stronger than I had ever imagined. I never thought I would have to use this technique. Looking up into the storm clouds, the female captain was shocked to see a massive hole beginning to form in the clouds, directly above them. What is that? The end, replied Naruto solemnly. I honestly never wanted to use this technique, since I still can't control it fully, and don't know how much damage it can do, but you've left me no choice. Moments after Naruto saying this, a massive tornado slowly began to descend from the hole in the clouds, and hovered over them. Down below, Soifin's subordinates were in a state in shock when they saw the massive tornado hovering over their captain and Naruto. What is that? Asked one Onmitsukido member. It looks like a tornado, said another Onmitsukido member. There's no way, said a third member. It is, said the second Onmitsukido member. Just who the hell is that guy? Said the first Onmitsukido member. Impossible, cried Soifin when she saw the giant tornado and tried to move away, but was stopped by 6 of the Naruto clones, who grabbed her legs, arms and body, preventing her from moving. There's no point in running, there is no escape from Ten no Sabaki, heaven's judgment, it's over, said Naruto before swinging his hand down, causing the massive tornado to descend down upon them. Within seconds of enveloping both Naruto and Soifin, the giant tornado fell down to the ground, destroying everything within its reach. Seeing the tornado racing down towards them, the remaining members of the Onmitsukido tried to run away, but none could escape it in time, and were drawn into the massive vortex of wind and scattered all around the Serite. Amida was of course no exception, where after just freeing himself from the rubble he was trapped under, he was sucked into the giant tornado and blown away, while crying out to his captain for help. And Bleach Os, stand up, be strong. After a few minutes, the tornado finally dissipated, but by then everything within a 10-mile radius was destroyed. All that was left was ruined buildings and rubble. But in distant part of the radius, a young blonde teen began pushing off some large pieces of rubble that had landed on top of him. Covered in dirt and dried blood, the injured Naruto slowly pulled himself out of the debris, and held onto his now bleeding right shoulder. Ugh, that wasn't fun, Naruto thought to himself as he looked himself over, minus the numerous cuts and bruises he had all over his body. He had a large piece of debris sticking out of his shoulder, along with at least 6 broken ribs and a slight concussion. Needless to say, Naruto knew he needed to get out of here and get some medical aid, but before he could even move, he suddenly felt a sharp jab in his back. Got you? Looking back, Naruto was surprised to see Soifin standing behind him. Like Naruto, Soifin had been badly injured by his last attack. Her clothes were in shreds, her body was covered in burns, cuts and bruises. She had several broken ribs, along with a severe fracture in her right leg and a dislocated shoulder. But despite everything that happened, she was smiling, knowing she had finally won after hitting Naruto in the back, at exactly the same point she had hit him earlier in the fight. Any last words? Asked Soifin, smirking coldly at her blonde opponent, knowing that within seconds he would be dead. Yeah, just one. Naruto replied with his own smirk. Boom. Before female captain could even begin to understand what he meant, Naruto exploded, revealing that he had in fact been a clone, which blew up right after he said boom, and before Soifin could even try to escape. After the clone exploded, Soifin was sent crashing into a large pile of rubble, her body covered in even more burns and cuts. Shortly after the explosion, the real Naruto appeared out from some rubble, and slowly made his way over to Soifin. Seeing the injured Naruto making his way over to her, the former student of Uruchi tried to move, but due to her injuries, her body would not move, leaving her utterly helpless. Finish it, Soifun spat, giving Naruto a defiant look. Smiling, Naruto shook his head, indicating he wouldn't. Sorry, but that's not my way. I don't kill an enemy that is helpless. Then you're an idiot. Smiling again, Naruto just nodded. I've been told that, but that's just my way. Besides, I don't think our teacher would approve of me killing you. Where is she? Soifun shouted angrily. Where is Uruchi? Is she with you? Tell me. Sorry, but since you didn't ask me nicely, I won't tell, Naruto replied in a mocking tone, while shaking his head in amusement. But if I see her, I'll make sure to tell her that you send your regards. But just after saying this, Naruto sensed a large number of spiritual powers heading towards their location, several of which were quite powerful. Even if he wasn't injured, Naruto knew he stood no chance of defending himself against the coming reinforcements, as he had used up almost all his spiritual power in his last attack, leaving him barely enough power to even escape. With his time now limited, Naruto turned and smiled again at the injured Soifun. Well, it was fun while it lasted, but I guess our time is up. Let's do it again some other time. But before I go, here's a little something to remember me by, where Naruto leaned down and kissed the female captain hard on the lips. Shocked by what Naruto had done, Soifun's eyes widened to the size of saucers, but due to the state of her body, she could do nothing to stop him. A few seconds later, Naruto pulled himself away from Soifun, who now looked murderous, and wanted nothing more than skin Naruto alive with her bare hands. But before she could make any threats upon his life, the blonde Shinigami gave her a cheeky salt and said, "Catch you later, Fan-Fan-chan," before taking off with Shunpo. Moments later, the entire Sarate could hear Soifun's angry screams, as she swore bloody revenge on the blonde teen, shouting out that she would not rest until she found him, and what she would do to him when she did. Needless to say, Naruto had moved up on the female captain's hit list, replacing his mother as number 1. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.